Welcome to the Global Discussion, discussions with creatives, leaders and thinkers. My name's Simon Hodgkins and I'm joined today by Eleanor Tweddell. Eleanor, you're very welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's begin by asking you to introduce yourself, tell us all about your journey and the wonderful world that you're involved in. So over to you, Eleanor.
Oh, wow. And thank you so much for having me. When people ask that, you always think, oh my God, where do I start? Do I start way back when, in the olden days? Do I have to go there? So corporate career, I'm a corporate escapee, I guess now, but corporate career, started selling beer for Whitbread Beer Company, doesn't exist now. Did really well, was very good, surprisingly, at selling beer. But then I left, and from beer, I went to the internet. I sold the internet. So we used to cold call big companies like GlaxoSmithKline and say, we've got the future, it's on a Pipex disk, buy it. And the IT department would go, absolutely not, that will not come into our firewalls, absolutely not, go away. So our whole thing was this innovator that was setting us up in a basement in Regent Street saw the future and said, no, we're going to do this. So yeah, there's a couple of us selling the internet. So that's kind of my sales background. And I would say to anyone, start in sales, because it just gives you everything you need for the rest of your career. So that's where I started. Beer and the internet. What more do you need? I went back to Whitbread and they bought Costa Coffee. And my manager came up and said, we've bought a coffee company. I'm going to transfer you over there to Lambeth Roastery. A couple of people setting it up. You need to go over. And I was gutted because I was like, yeah, but I've got all these nightclubs and my clients, I can get in free. Why would I do that? Who wants coffee? But anyway, I went over, met all my best friends that I've got now. And this is a very long time ago, but we're still best friends. Started this business, selling coffee, creating coffee stores. And that's really where I kind of got into communications, because we kept opening stores, getting there, and, you know, somebody has painted it green and got the wrong cups and done this awful, and we were like, what's going on here? And we just didn't have any comms, really good, strong comms that were going out to tell the story of the brand. And internal comms didn't really exist then. So I just started kind of photocopying newsletters and sending it out to all the stores. And this is how I got into it. From there, that is when I became a comms professional, I guess. And I've worked for companies like RAC, Virgin Atlantic, Vodafone, and done corporate comms. At Vodafone, I went on maternity leave. And when I came back, I said, I want something different. They gave me the graduate program to run, which was incredible. Absolutely loved that, future talent team. But unfortunately, a new HR director came along, made us all redundant. And you know, after 25 years in corporate, you sit there and go, okay, maybe this is a moment I need to stop and think, can I do this anymore? So that's kind of where I've got to. That was 8 years ago, sitting in an interview for what should have been an amazing job with an amazing guy, ticked all the boxes, but I just felt like, I don't want to do this. And I don't know why. What is going on? So I went home and just sat and thought, I've got a baby. We're a military family. So we move like every 18 months, 2 years, which adds complexity to the whole thing. And I just thought, I think I need to do something new. So I went, weirdly, Facebook has a lot to offer when it comes to inspiration of what to do next. An advert came up for the Do Lectures. I don't know if you've been to the Do Lectures or...
Yeah, they're very good. The Do Lectures, yeah, very, very good, yeah.
Yeah, that came up and I just said, I don't even know what this thing is, but what the heck, go for it. I remember driving there, left my baby with my husband, and went to the Do Lectures for 3 days and thought, what am I doing? What? I just go and get a job like anybody else. But yeah, it was really inspiring. And I thought, no, I'm going to do something new. So first of all, I contracted, just got comms job, safe, very safe. Then I went a bit crazy and I started selling beach towels in a marketplace. I don't know. Don't ask me. I don't know what happened. I did move it online and started growing. And actually, it was really good fun. It was me and another person went to Christmas fairs selling beach towels. We loved it. Snuggle Truffle was the brand. And then COVID came along and Christmas fairs were cancelled and all of our kind of points where we got revenue went. But another door had been brewing. So I'd been writing a blog about losing my job. And I thought, I'm going to just put all this together and pitch it to a book coach. And it was a book coach at that time. And worked with her to pull all these blogs together. And then she said, pens down, I'm going to full disclaimer, I'm actually an agent as well. I want to take your book to a book fair. Pitched it out, got loads of interest, got lots of rejections as well, I should point out. But then Penguin was one of the ones that were really interested. So that's how I got the book deal. And then when COVID came along, another door kind of grew out of that. And we started helping people be made redundant. But like everything, you start a new business, you have to keep evolving. And it got hard to keep that up. People who've been made redundant don't want to spend a lot of money at that moment in time. And I started realizing, actually, we get people to a certain point with our program and we leave them to it. And when I went back to people and said, how are you doing? You lost your job, you came on our program, you felt better. How are you doing? They were like, oh, I've just gone back to get a job. So I felt like I was sort of letting people down a bit. So the next part evolved last year called Recommended, which is our platform. There's a couple of us behind the scenes that help people grow their confidence, grow their offer, get them out there, connected to corporates or people who are going to buy, and give them a better chance at getting that first client. Or if it might not even be the first client, but it's a different kind of client that they need to keep going. So that's where we're at today.
That's some journey, Eleanor. Just for our international audience, I just want to recap on a couple of things if I can. Because you started off, you were saying back in the beer days and Whitbread, and that Whitbread was a huge organization. Just for our worldwide audience who may not be familiar with them, they were extremely large and they bought lots of businesses along the way. And then Costa is a huge company as well. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest. And, I know that was kind of maybe on the sales side initially and then the service side, but also your communications work. You went back for another 5 years at Whitbread and looked after a lot of that communication, a lot of that change management. You did head of communications for the RAC, which again, for our worldwide audience, it's a huge, probably European, if not international, motoring organization, very, very large scale in the UK market. And of course, you did communications for Virgin Atlantic. And I think most people have heard of Virgin Atlantic around the world. And of course, Vodafone, one of the biggest players in the world. And then it seemed as though you kind of had a look at it as well, because I know as well, you did quite a bit of communications as well for Channel 4, the television network as well, which you didn't mention. And so it really was this sort of corporate career. And it's just interesting that when you sort of, you mentioned the military family, and, I know people who are in the military and they do move around a lot, and it sometimes it works out and sometimes it's a bit more difficult and a bit more challenging. I'm sure you know all about that. But it is fascinating when you were putting your blog together about the process, of something that probably wasn't the greatest thing, losing a great job in a big, multinational organization. And then for that book coach, I think you said, to turn into a book agent. And lo and behold, all of a sudden, this Penguin deal comes out. Now, I know you said there's lots of rejections in that. And I think anybody who's tried to get a book published, that route, there's a lot of rejection. But it is a great achievement to have a book published by Penguin Random House. And that must have been a real great time. I mean, that must have been a real time of celebration, which I think flourished. You were saying sort of the other businesses grew out of that. So tell us more about Another Door. Tell us exactly what that does, but also tell me and tell our listeners, if you don't mind, because you've got the Rethink magazine, which you haven't mentioned either. And you've also got founder, which you have mentioned, but maybe go into a bit more detail about another door and founder and exactly how those two work.
Yeah, so much in there. Yeah. Busy person, but weirdly I'm not that busy really. Well, another door came from it being a blog. So I literally set it up thinking I'm going to write about losing my job. I have no clue how to do this. Coming out of corporate, yeah, you're ahead of comms, but other people write the blogs. I had no idea about social media. I wasn't even on LinkedIn, or if I was, I certainly blocked everybody because they annoyed me. So I was coming talk about identity. You've got to completely reinvent yourself. So the blog was the first kind of way. And it came from when I lost my job, I went back to my desk, and quite a lot of us were in this situation. Someone came over and they said, oh, well, when one door closes, another door opens. And wrong moment. Absolutely not. I've just lost my job. Not only that, I knew how much it had actually personally would impact, because we were trying for another baby. I was 42 by that point. Those marginal gains and errors and everything was very, moment in time. I knew that, no, this job is more than that. You don't even know what you're talking about. So I was really angry at that comment, even though it was done with the best intention. So when I drove home, I was like, oh, why is that irritating? You talk about waste of energy. So eventually I got over that and embraced it and said, why is this sticking in my head? And embraced this another door concept and wrote about it. And then because it just kept expanding and people then come and say, I've lost my job, can I talk to you about it? I thought, oh, maybe is there a thing? And I didn't know about career coaching or anything then. So I just used to, yeah, sure, talk. And then I actually got a business coach and he said, yeah, create a package, create a program, do this, do that. So he was another kind of milestone moment of taking this a bit more seriously, taking myself a bit more seriously, doing something a bit different, not just comms. Because things like Channel 4 and I work for Trinity Mirror and people, they're contracts, they were my clients, but that's comfort zone still, it's still my comfort zone. So another door was really, yeah, let's do something different in the coaching space. 7 years ago when there wasn't really that, I mean, there was, but it wasn't really known. But again, it was really hard to get going, to keep your momentum. But yeah, did really well. And in COVID, certainly, everyone was losing their job. We won big contracts with organizations helping people do redundancy really well. So that grew. But then in 2021, we lost all those contracts because furlough changed in the UK. It was a system. Everybody moved their redundancy programs. And talk about having all your eggs in one basket. Suddenly it went. So this is where I started digging a bit deeper as to what is going on now? Where are these people that want to do something new? How can we help? What's going on? And just had to reinvent myself again, because I don't think it is linear. Like when you're sort of reinventing yourself, you don't just do it once. You have to do it again and keep adapting and moving and changing. So yeah, recommended came from that point. And then I started thinking, well, how can I showcase all these very brilliant people that are on this platform and working with us? So I invented a magazine. If I can get media, I do get a lot of media myself, which is great. But if you can't, why not just create your own? So I created Rethink Work magazine to showcase people on the platform and give them, again, their first article, their first showpiece. So yeah, that's how it all came about.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And the story that you tell there in terms of, you were one of those businesses that, while people were sort of losing their jobs during COVID and the initial shutdowns, your business kind of flourished because you were all of a sudden really, really busy. And it's often those times of being really busy where you don't really think about, well, what's coming next. And then all of a sudden, the furlough rules changed in the UK quite dramatically. Which was a good thing overall. Yeah. But immediately you had to rethink about, well, I better move pretty quick here. I better get this agile business thinking going, because we've got to pivot, I think is the term people would say. You've got to come up with, well, how are you going to do that? But now you're obviously in a space where you're sort of showcasing people who are, maybe people who are looking for speakers or trainers or experts or just people with those fresh ideas those people that have that sort of talent. And I know that one of the things that you say about the founder network is that you're almost like this corporate matchmaker,
Yeah.
That's kind of a nice way of putting it. But you're also building a community, and you're also building relationships, aren't you? Which is so important, even though we find ourselves more and more in the digital world. Do you find that in your business too?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm one of those, I work from home on my own most of the time. And community is, you do miss that. And sometimes I do find myself sitting there thinking, God, I wonder if I should apply for a real job again. And I think, why? And it's because I miss that interaction, that energy of people. And so then you have to create it. So I do think what we're creating is really nice behind the scenes, encouraging each other when people are going for pitches or they've created, a speaker set and they're off to do it. How nice is it to have a good group of people behind you going, yeah, do it. So it is part of that for sure. But, I'm not going to kind of make this glossy. It was really rough. And as you said, in the busy times, you just think, oh, we're busy forever now. This is it. I was getting loads of media for the book. I was like, yeah, this is showtime. I did not expect that in 6 months I was going to lose everything again, back to square one. And I had to go back and contract to build up cash flow again, to invest again. So I had to take some big decisions. And at the same time, my husband got deployed to NATO. So he disappeared. So now I'm a solo parent. So I've been solo parenting for the last 3 years. And that adds a new complexity that you go, oh, well, I'm winning all these contracts, but now I can't just get up and go to London and run these big things. So that changed. And again, that's why it made me think, well, I can't now do this stuff. I can't do my speaker gigs that I was loving, but I can show people how I did it. I can't now. I've got my daughter to drop off, pick up, but I can show others how I did it when I was back up and running again. So yeah, it's kind of a combination of circumstances. You've got to try and fit that need and understanding what's going on in the market. But yeah, I do feel there's something there. We want lots of fresh voices, fresh ideas. Let's give people a chance. They might not have won a gold medal or climbed Everest, but people have amazing thought and ideas that need to be heard. And that's kind of where I'd like to get recommended to.
Yeah, and it's obvious that you have a passion for that. I mean, it comes through loud and clear. And, it's interesting when you, obviously back to the military thing, when your partner then gets deployed and all of a sudden they're not there anymore, because there's a job for them to do. It is challenging, running a business anyway. And then when the circumstances behind the scenes change, you have to adapt. And I think maybe in today's environment, and you can tell me if I'm completely wrong here, but in today's environment, there is probably a better opportunity to almost create that company or that role that you want, because there's lots of tools out there. There's lots of people willing to help now. Yes, it takes a little bit of money. It certainly takes a lot of hard work and hours and commitment, but it's probably more agile. Let's use that word again. There's an element of flexibility that's required. And it's almost as though you need, people today can, if they work at it, almost create the kind of ideal working scenario, whether that's working from home, working from anywhere else on the planet, or doing the kind of work that they're attracted and interested in doing.
Yeah, I think you should definitely give it a go. That's what I say. I would never be with those people that, yeah, you can do anything you like. I don't kind of sign up to that particularly, because yeah, I do see loads of people doing amazing stuff and it just doesn't pay off. And sometimes it's felt like that for me. There've been so many times when it's gone back to zero and you've got to start again, and you've got to, as I said, get a different way of earning money and then reset. So I don't really subscribe to you can do anything you want. It's just, but I do think everybody should give it their best chance. Like, I think we owe it to ourselves to put ourselves in a position that you've tried everything, that if opportunity comes your way, you're going to grab it. That's what I kind of subscribe to. Like, give yourself the best chance possible to live how you want to live.
Very good. And any more thoughts on writing another book? Any more blogs in the pipeline?
Well, Simon, this is a big question. So,
because everybody must ask you, right? I mean, everybody must ask you.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a weird self-imposed pressure. So I did write another book 2 years ago when I had not, like when that crash came, and I was at a peak thinking life was great, and it crashed. So I wrote another book, pitched it. I wrote about 75,000 words, and we pitched it. No, it was a dead no, nothing. So I kind of felt like I maybe had been dropped by Penguin. They just, no. So that felt really harsh to work through. I was really like, wow, my ego took a massive, like, wow, this is hard. I'm going to have to start all over again. So I wrote another one, a bit more practical, almost a little bit boring. And my agent went, yeah, this is so dull. I was like, yeah, it's dull. Okay. So forget that. And I got really frustrated. So, and I wasn't sleeping very well. So I was getting up at like midnight, 1 o'clock after putting my daughter to bed. And I just started writing this novel, created these 2 characters each day, got up and wondered what they were doing. So I wrote like a 50,000 word novel. And again, I gave it to my agent. She was like, yeah, I like it. We're just going to have to change everything. And I was like, oh, no, man, I don't want to do this. So forget that. Well, it's kind of hovering there. So anyway, in the end, I said, I just feel like Another Door is a book. Like I want to tell stories. So my podcast is that, you know, telling stories of another door, because it's not just job loss. We have doors closing in our lives in all sorts of different ways, and they affect us. So I'm kind of exploring that. So that's where I'm at. So who knows where that's going to pop next, but that's kind of what I'm writing into, talking to people on my podcast. Who knows where it goes?
Well, you're speaking like a true writer. They've always got 4 or 5 books on the go, and you don't sound any different, Eleanor. I was talking to a great up-and-coming writer very recently, and she was saying to me that, you know, just because a book gets a rejection, some of her best sort of successes came after lots of rejection. And the way that she looks at it now is that it just hasn't found the right home yet, you know?
Yeah.
So I did like that.
Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about podcasting as a medium then, because you obviously like podcasting. It obviously is I'm imagining it's a great way for you to meet people too, and to explore that sort of new creative thinker. And of course, you're building a community through your own podcast too. So tell us a little bit about why you got into podcasting, what are you doing in podcasting, and all about your podcast.
Yeah, I started the podcast, Another Door podcast, about 4 or 5 years ago. I saw Paul Sutton was doing like a workshop in London, and I'd been listening to his podcast, just loving it. I think that was maybe the first one I listened to. And I thought, oh, wow, I was in awe. Like, I could go to a workshop with Paul Sutton. It's funny how you kind of associate people. Went along and he was kind of showing how you do it. And I thought, yeah, let's just do it. And I started doing it, but just on my own, and interviewed a couple of people who would just agree, tried to edit it. I hated my voice, so tried to get me out of it, did all that overthinking, like really awful, and I messed it all up, and I felt miserable, and I was just embarrassed. I just thought, what am I doing? Stop it, like just park it. So for months it just sat there as a big mess, and I just thought, oh my goodness. And then there was one day, I think I was listening to someone else's podcast, and they sort of said, you know, it's kind of messy, but you just get on with it. And an editor was promoting on a website that I was on, or a community that I was on. You know, he was doing these kind of join me and I'll help you do your podcast. And I thought, do it, like get back into it. So I found this editor, Steve, who's just brilliant. He just takes my stuff now. I do not get involved. I could just think about the story and the guests, and I loved it. And so yeah, I'm on about 100 and maybe 30 we've done now. At the start it was all experts about, you know, how do you, when you lose your job, and it was like experts. But then I don't know what you find, Simon, but I kind of caught myself thinking, hang on a minute, I'm just promoting other people's work. And people were like texting me going, oh, thanks, I got some business out of that, blah blah blah. And sometimes I wasn't, because redundancy is, you know, as I said, you know, B2C, nobody really wants to pay you. So I did have a moment of like, what am I doing? This is a really popular podcast, which is just advertising other people. So that's when I started moving more into stories and this storyification of, and I love that anyway. I love that far better. You know, I love it when people tell their story. You can learn from that more than an expert who just wants to sell their program or their book, or they're going through something quite processed. I wanted people to come and relax and just tell their story. So yeah, it's been a journey, definitely. I'm sure you've been through it as well with experimenting.
Well, I do. I've had another podcast which is in the hundreds as well. And I think you learn, I changed a lot of the processes around 30, 40 episodes in, because you do need that little process behind the scenes, because a lot of people who are maybe being the other side, not the person producing the podcast, it might look a little bit easy, but there's a lot of work behind the scenes, and you need to have a workflow worked out and everything. But I do agree with you on your point about stories, and I love nothing better than talking to, the sweet spot for the global discussion is creatives, leaders and thinkers, because there are sort of life lessons that come up, and I think people do like it as almost a regular check-in to find out what's going on, to meet interesting people, so that is great. But congratulations on the podcast, another door. And it is amazing what an editor behind the scenes can help you get done in a shorter period of time. Okay, I want to change gear a little bit if I can now, and I want to ask you a couple of quick questions. It's not really a quick fire question round, but it's close enough. I want to ask you about your own learning style. So are you just listen to podcasts all day long? Do you prefer actually just talking to people at an event? Or are you searching the website or listening to audiobooks? How do you learn today? How do you keep abreast of new information? And how do you sort of get new onboarding of information to help you stay abreast of all the areas that you need to?
Such a good question. I do absorb an enormous amount. I think I am a bit of a sort of absorb lots of things. There's not many times I couldn't have an opinion on something or know about something somehow. I don't know how. So yeah, books for sure. But I do scan as well. So like I love things like Blinkist, where you could just get 15 minutes done. Yeah, I get it. Like I don't need the whole book. I get it. Or I would get Blinkist and kind of get a feel for something and go, oh, this is actually intriguing. I will invest in reading. But again, I always have about 4 or 5 books on the go, and they've got to kind of go with me, what my pace is. So definitely that. I quite like kind of courses like the Do Lectures have been doing, which I got kind of all of theirs, which is really punchy, short attention span. That I'm definitely like, okay, 5 minutes, come on, get to the point. So definitely that. Yes, for sure, podcasts. Listen to, like Bruce Daisley and Gridley Career, all the obvious ones. But I also like other things like Annie Mac. I love hers. You can learn so much with her changes. I absolutely love that. And all kinds of random stuff. So yeah, but I would say my learning style, more like how do I just learn, deeper learning, is I am just start it and work it out. And I'm terrible for that. I don't kind of spend any time in reading an instruction or overthinking. I probably need to. I just go, oh yeah, just start this, and then suddenly I would be like, oh my god, what is this? Okay, where do I find an expert who's going to help me get out of this? So yeah, I'm a bit like that.
I like that, because I've had a few conversations with people on the show about that particular learning style, and some people, I think it's just hardwired in some people. They sort of building the airplane while they're in flight.
Yeah.
And, that works really well for some people, and something you said there as well. I think sometimes having the foresight to say, look, I need an expert here. I need somebody to come in and help me with this. I think that's normally where you see help, asking for help is such an important quality. And sometimes you can get so carried away doing it all yourself that you're missing the obvious sometimes. And sometimes it's the most simplest things I find. But somebody will say to me, well, have you thought about this, Simon? And you'll go, oh, yeah, of course. Yes. I'm such a fool,
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, so I really like that answer. Thanks. And what about your journey? What about people that you admire, people that have inspired you, people when things maybe haven't been going so well that have give you that little helping hand? Or is it a particular person, or is it a particular character trait? What do you admire?
Oh, great question again. I think you become actually more tuned into what you need around you. And it's not necessarily that you might know them in your circle, but you certainly think, oh, I need a dose of this. And you can get that through actually a podcast or something like that. You can now. So certainly, you know, conversations like Annie McManus podcast, I listened to a lot of that when I was feeling kind of a little bit down, and Viv Groskop's as well, brilliant podcast. So it's kind of that, definitely those two, I kind of love their whole sentiment, and they can bring you out of a bit of a, you know, stuck mode. But then there's kind of a community of us that we've probably been all trying to do some sort of online business for maybe 4 or 5 years. So we've Cudsy, and then there's Claire Winter. Like, it's just a little online community, but they're doing really cool stuff. And they've started, maybe we all sort of started together, and they're growing their thing. And I think it's more localized now. Like, I can get energy from that and see they're growing. I've got a great business coach, which funny enough, I started with 6 years ago, Robin Waite. Disappeared when I moved, because I moved away from Bristol, and then he's back now because I'm back working with him again. And he's just always been, yeah, very inspiring, because again, very ethical when it comes to business coaching. So I think for me, it's more localized than these big, you know, big names. To me, it's got to be a bit closer than that.
Yeah, I get that a lot. And I think sometimes you can learn an awful lot from things that maybe aren't right, you know, in your lane. You know, maybe things are a little bit left or a little bit right of your normal sort of process.
Yeah, well, that's funny you said that, because one of my coaches, I've got those coaches that say used for different things, Jessica Huey, she's a bit more spiritual. And I think you had her actually on the global discussion, and she's one of my coaches. And I'm not quite in the spirituality vibe, like, but I'm open to it. So I love working with her because she has a very different perspective, and that's healthy as well. You should have people, not all group think, it should be different. And love working with her, and the people she attracts are all really, like, you know, in this different perspective on things. So I enjoy that as well.
Yeah, I think it leads to better creativity ultimately.
Yeah.
Better thinking. Okay, the next thing I want to ask you is a little bit about advice. So obviously you've mentioned a few coaches, they must be giving you advice. But is there any advice that you picked up along the way that you've taken to heart that you think is so important that you still live by it today? Or is there advice that you find yourself passing on to other people?
So I think if you're starting something new, I think the biggest thing to know, I don't know if it's advice, but, you know, just to know it's bumpy, and there'll be so many times that you'll want to stop. And I can't remember who said it to me, but they said the people who get achievement and success from what they want to do are the people that keep going when everyone else drops out. So the moment that you feel like stopping and you have to, or reset or whatever it is, that's fine. But make sure you go again, because that's how you get success and you get fulfillment from what you're doing. It's that kind of everlasting kind of exploration of possibility. Don't ever give up on that. But the people who kind of feel like a failure, whatever failure is, they just give up and say, it didn't work out. And even that, I kind of think I'm all right with that. You know, if someone wants to do that, that's still not a failure. They tried. Back to that first point, you know, you've got to give yourself the best chance. But yeah, it was really, I cannot remember who said it, but they were like, no, you know, the people, you'll find fulfillment and success on the other side of keep going.
Yeah, and again, that's a great point for people in business, because there's something about showing up, isn't there? There's something about consistency that's important. And that, you know, I think it was Simon Alexander Ong, I think I was talking about that. And I know he's been on your podcast too. And he's a great guy, right? I mean, another Penguin House. You must all have a little club together somewhere.
Do you know what? If they do, they haven't invited me. So,
all right,
you know,
okay.
You find out book, about that.
His book, Energize, is doing really well.
Yeah.
And he seems to be speaking everywhere. But,
yeah,
you know, it's about having that process, isn't it? Because on the days where maybe you don't feel like it or things are going particularly wrong, if you've kind of thought it through and you can apply yourself consistently, it helps you move forward through it. And yes, there are times, I think, to your point, where sometimes you've got to stop doing something and start doing something else. That's important too. But often people do that when actually what was required was a bit more consistency and a bit more application, maybe.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's just checking in with yourself, isn't it? Like, what is going on? Why am I feeling a bit fed up today? Why am I feeling a bit stuck? Maybe I have just seen that Simon's got another bloody speaker set in bloody Dubai, and like, oh my God, I'm gonna kill that man. How's he doing this? And then I go, wow, that's amazing. He's so, it's so inspiring. But for a moment, you can just get really cross about it. That's human. And then I remember, you're a solo parent, Ellen, even if you've got a gig in Dubai, it's not going to happen. So, you've got to have these little check-ins of what is going on and embrace it. Because I think, we can pretend, but, all sorts of different things. That's what happens. So I do my little check-ins. Yeah, I see Simon and I'm like, oh, for goodness sake, really? And then I send him a little message and I go, you know what? Well done. He is inspiring. Of course he is. He's kind of like creating this energy. Of course he is. That's what the book's about. Around the world. Good for him. He's, So yeah, it's funny. I think we have to just be a bit more check in with ourselves, what's really going on, and then reset and go again.
Yeah, and he was. I love talking to Simon Alexander Ong because, it all looks great. That I'm jetting off here and I'm speaking here and I'm at this awards here. But then when he tells you the story about when he was trapped in the corporate life and he had to escape down the fire escape and change his clothes so he could actually go out and do what he really wanted to do, you see the behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I suppose that one of the last sort of things, as we sort of come to the end of our time together, the next 6, 9, 12 months, the year ahead, as best as you can, what do you hope to achieve? Do you plan in a traditional way? How does that work for you? And what's on the horizon? What are you hoping to achieve over the next sort of 6, 9, 12 months?
Yeah, I should probably do a bit better at the planning thing, but I do now set quarterly goals. Yeah, so the next couple of months and years. I'm not a huge planner, if I'm going to be honest. But I do try and set quarterly review points and say, right, where do I want to get to this point? Where do I want to get to that point? And certainly for recommended, because I'm absolutely in it and loving it and I can see the potential. I've got to hold myself back sometimes from where I want to take it. But I certainly slow it down through actual proper real targets. Otherwise I can get a bit excited about the vision. So, but I still do contracting and I still do projects and freelance work to invest in it behind the scenes. So it certainly doesn't make me the money at all. It doesn't make any money because I spend it all on the platform and on, coaches. But I would like to get it to a point where it is, and I'm fully, focused on it, which is where I got another door. It took me about 3 years to get another door to that point. So yeah, I would like to get it to that point, but I'm realistic again. I don't really want to go down the investor route, but who knows? I got a little bit stung in investor world with another door. Everyone got very excited in 2020. I had several investors all over me thinking, wow, redundancy is the future. I mean, that's ironic in itself. And it was hard actually. I was like, what is this world? All this big money and big plans. So I don't think I want to go down that route. So I'm quite happy how it's going. I'm ambitious for it. So maybe it's a 2-year, 3-year plan of eventually it will be my income. Yeah.
And like that, you can balance it with the other areas of work that you do.
Yeah.
And keep moving it forward, maybe on your own terms.
Yeah, definitely.
Really. Well, look, there's only really 2 things that we need to cover to wrap up here today, Eleanor. And one is there anything else that I haven't mentioned that you'd like to maybe bring to the attention of our audience, or anything else you'd maybe want to reiterate or tell us about? And secondly, and importantly, if people want to find out about what you're doing, find your website, get in touch with you, where's the best place to send them to?
I was thinking about that. I've been on a few podcasts recently, like how do you kind of end? And I just think there's so much out there now. The world feels quite heavy, doesn't it? And lots of stuff going on that maybe it's not quite aligning, and we're not kind of cracking. We can see possibility, but for some reason we can't. It's out of our reach, whether it's layoffs on a mass scale or climate change or war or whatever's going on. It can feel heavy. But I still think like things like what you're doing, listen to the people who've got positive stuff going on and communities that are being built to solve this stuff, and you can just get so much energy from it. And I just remind myself of that when I have bad days. I literally just find like something online that's got loads of positive vibes, like happy startups or the do lectures, or somewhere there's going to be someone who's got something, and you go, wow. Or read what you're doing, the global discussion group. You can find it. So I say to people, keep that kind of space of hope, put your energy in it, step into it yourself, and we can do good stuff on a global scale. So yeah, maybe that's how we can end.
That's wonderful. And where's the best place to send people to, Eleanor?
Oh yeah, and as you can imagine, I've got websites all over the place. LinkedIn is probably where I kind of most active. I don't do too much other social media. I'm just on LinkedIn. I had to focus my scatty brain, not scatty, but I don't want to be all over the place. So I'm very focused on LinkedIn, but I'm at anotherdoor.co.uk and eleanortweddell.com. But yeah, LinkedIn, probably just drop me a message, say hello. Love that. I have loads of people dropping messages and I always reply as much as I can. Maybe not to those weird leads that you get every now and again, but
well, that's great. Well, look, that brings us nicely to the end of the episode today here on the Global Discussion. So thanks to everybody who's watching and listening around the world. Make sure that you like, follow, subscribe, do everything that I need you to do to help support the Global Discussion. And I hope that you'll join me back here for some more discussions with creative leaders and thinkers. So thank you, Eleanor. It's been lovely to catch up with you today. Continued success with the podcast, with the businesses and everything that you're doing.
Thank you very much for having me.